Everything is bigger in Texas, including the disappointing Bills losses, as we discuss the Texans beating the Bills 23-20 to drop to 3-2. Let's go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Pro Football Hall of Famer and former Buffalo Bill Andre Reed. You're listening to Nate and the Fellas on Circle the Wagons podcast. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Go Bills.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now? Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo. Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo. The Bills make me wanna shout.
Hey, Bills Mafia, what is up? Welcome to another episode of Circling the Wagons, a Buffalo Bills podcast. I am your host, Nate. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We are doing a live stream on Twitter. We are pre-recording this on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, wherever you're listening to this. And we're going to discuss the Bills' loss to the Texans 20-20. This is an opportunity for any of you out there to get in your thoughts on the Bills' loss, to get your thoughts on who is to blame in this loss. We got a lot of blame to go around. We can do the blame game if you want a little bit later on, see who we think is responsible for this loss. I think there's a lot of people, a lot of blame to go around by different individuals. We're going to discuss that. We'll do our sweet, sassy, molassy plays of the game, Wall of Fame, Wall of Shame, like we normally do. But a lot of this is going to be, if you want to react as a listener, this is your chance to do so. I can record you live, and I can give you that opportunity. First, I am Nate, your host, and I am doing this solo. Mike and John couldn't make it. I did it a day later. I haven't been feeling great the last couple of days. I don't know if you guys are, I don't know if it's a change in the seasons, it's allergies or whatever it is, but sinus infection, I have no idea, but wasn't feeling great. Still don't feel great, but I'm going to push through tonight to talk about this loss. This was crazy. This was a different loss than what we're normally used to as Bills fans, at least the week before that. The Ravens game that wasn't even close. It was a beatdown from the beginning by Baltimore, and it lasted all the way through the game. This game started off that way. It started to look like it was going to be a complete beatdown again, and then the Bills came to life. The defense started to respond to the Texans. I mean, it didn't hurt. The Texans lost Nico Collins, their best wide receiver, just on a wide open pass. That was pretty crazy. I don't know if you guys thought that was as crazy as I was, but rarely do you see a player get a wide open touchdown pass, walk into the end zone, and then leave the game with an injury. It almost seemed like it was going to be a sign that the Bills could potentially take this game and win it. And in true Bills fashion, they did not. As if you've been a Bills fan for more than 10 years, you realize that until the clock is 0-0, the Bills have not won the game. And this was one of those games, and the Bills were down, and then they kind of made it a game again, 17, 20, 20-20. And you're like, okay, all right, well, they can force into overtime. Again, this was a game that wasn't close. As far as I'm concerned, the Bills got lucky with a couple of plays that went their way, but the defense did button up in the second half, and that's why the Bills were in it. It definitely wasn't because of the offense. It's because the defense was forcing turnovers. I'm thinking about that Dwayne Smoot strip of CJ Stroud deep in their territory in the Texans side of the field. That was a great play. Dorian Williams picked up the fumble. Bills got a field goal out of it. Not ideal. Later, Terrell Bernard intercepted a pass. Great play by Terrell Bernard. How much did we miss that guy? And still the Bills couldn't capitalize on it in the way that you wanted them to. And their offense was just lackluster. I mean, this is a team that should have a top 5, top 10 offense all the time. And they did through the first 3 weeks. They looked great. They were scoring 34 points, 35 points, 41 points. This was a good team. The problem is, in my opinion, now you guys let me know what you think, if you think that there's a better reason why the Bills lost. But to me, it starts with the Bills' offensive line. Now, I know there's a lot of reasons why the Bills lost. The offensive line isn't completely the reason. There's also a lack of weapons on the Bills' offense. There's also Josh Allen not playing well, not throwing to the hot route when the Texans or the Ravens are blitzing him. Poor decisions on that side of the ball. For sure, the defense didn't look great, but then again, like I said, they looked a lot better the second half. So what is the issue here for the Buffalo Bills? And if I think about it, Alan, the Bills don't have great wide receivers. And we talked last week about a chart that I mentioned from, I can't remember the gentleman's name that I posted on Twitter. I've retweeted a couple of times, but basically was, percentage of throws to wide open receivers versus how much of a separation the team's wide receivers had on any given play. And the Bills were like bottom 10 in wide receiver separation. They just don't have wide receivers that can separate. And it did not help that Khalil Shakir was injured. But my thinking or my thought process, and this was through week 4, so the Bills were still 3-1 at that point and still doing well with receivers that couldn't separate. I think the big difference is between this week, last week, and the first 3 weeks is that Josh Allen just doesn't have the time to actually wait for his guys to get open, the guys that can't separate, to give them a chance to actually separate. By standing in the pocket, it feels like, now I don't have numbers to support this right now, but as a fan watching the game, you're seeing several different times in each drive where Josh Allen is getting immediate pressure. And I'm not talking pressure necessarily a free runner, although that happens as well. But I'm talking Josh steps back, goes to throw, and he's already got to make a move to dodge a defender. Now, CJ Stroud didn't really have to deal with that a whole lot from the Bills pass rush. Of course, the Bills missing Von Miller. The Ravens didn't really have to worry about that the week beforehand. The Bills have consistently worried about that the last 2 weeks. And my thought process is if you give Josh time, he will find guys that are open. The Bills don't have great receivers, but between Kincaid, Knox, Shakir when he's healthy, Keon Coleman, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, even though I don't know, Mac Hollins, which we're going to get into Mac Hollins later, and Curtis Samuel, we're also going to get into later. Like, you can eventually find one of those guys open. That doesn't include James Cook out of the backfield, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis. There's options out there. It's just a matter of giving him time. And I think the second thing that I think was one of the biggest reasons that the Bills lost was coaching. I mean, Joe Brady wasn't doing a good enough job scheming these guys open. Was he giving Josh Allen a good hot read in case there was a blitz? It just felt like there wasn't a lot of motion the last couple of weeks, a lot of pre-snap motion. I don't know why they're going away from that. Some people were saying it's because of being in an opposing stadiums with a fan base that's really loud. It's hard to do that. I don't necessarily get that completely. They still find a way to snap the ball. Normally I don't get that. There's something behind that, which I guess I don't understand. But to me, that I've seen other players do that in our stadium, so I don't know why we can't do that in other players' stadiums. So I think it's Joe Brady. I think the game plan was pretty rough. I mean, the run game was starting to do well, but then again, wasn't able to really get off the ground. I think this has just been a really rough game plan for Joe Brady and the Buffalo Bills. And it's not even that it's a bad game plan. I think teams are finally figuring out after 3 weeks the Buffalo Bills offense. And if you remember, the Bills looked good under Ken Dorsey the first few games, and then they hit a rut. And right now, I think what's happening is Joe Brady's hitting a rut. Now, how he gets out of that rut will determine how the Bills do offensively this season. So if you're looking at the Bills were doing a great job running the ball. James Cook had 20 carries for 82 yards, 1 touchdown. It was just passing the ball. The Bills could not get it going. So you want to talk about blame Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott goes up there too with Joe Brady. I mean, obviously he's signing off on the game plan. He knows what Joe's going to call the last plays of the game. And let me know if you think this is the same way, but I didn't necessarily blame Sean McDermott for that or even Joe Brady for that. But it wasn't ideal, right? To not even run it one time and run some clock off. It was poor mismanagement of the game. But it kind of feels to me like last year when the Bills were playing the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs and Tyler Bass misses that field goal to stop the Bills from tying the game. And no point in that game did I think that the Bills were definitely going to win. It felt like they were just barely making it out of that game. I just didn't get the feeling like they were going to win. I felt the same way about this Texans win. If the Bills were able to get a tie, and actually force it into overtime, I didn't have any confidence in this offense in making a stop. So I don't know if you guys did, but I mean, just so happens, like, let's say the Bills did run it 3 times, ended the game, went into overtime. The Bills get the ball first half or first part of overtime. I don't necessarily see the Bills making it down the field for even a field goal. So that's kind of what my thoughts were on the game. I go offensive line, I go Joe Brady / kind of Sean McDermott. But man, if you're going to take credit away from Sean McDermott for the offense, you got to give it to him for the defensive side, and Bobby Babich for, stopping a really good offense in the second half and creating turnovers. So it's kind of a dichotomy there, kind of a paradox, whatever you want to call it. And then obviously, like, I can't not say this. Josh Allen is partly to blame. He just hasn't looked good the last 2 weeks. And I like how Aaron Quinn brought this up on Cover One on Twitter. He said, you can believe 2 things. You can believe in that Josh Allen deserves criticism. And then you can also say that Josh Allen also, is a great quarterback and you're so happy he's here. So I think that, oh, by the way, if you want to become a speaker, sorry, I haven't mentioned this before on this Twitter space. If you'd like to become a speaker, you can request the mic. And if you're interested, I can let you in and you can let me know your take on the game, any part of the game, the blame portion of it, the what did you like, what didn't you like, maybe your sweet, sassy, molassy play of the game. We can go over that. But all you have to do is request that mic. And once you do that, I can let you in at my discretion. So feel free to do that. I think it's on the bottom left-hand corner. I can't remember. And on my side, it's a lot different because I'm actually hosting it. But anyway, regardless. So and then obviously Josh Allen. So you can be one of those people that criticizes Josh Allen and say he did not have a good game, because I don't believe he did. I don't believe he's had 2 really rough games passing the ball. But that doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback. That doesn't mean you don't love him as your quarterback. That doesn't mean that you're not happy that he's your quarterback. I will say, though, like 95% of the time, at least, with Josh Allen or watching any football game whatsoever, I just watch the quarterbacks playing and I'm like, I am so glad that Josh Allen is our quarterback, because you just see the kind of garbage that gets trotted out by the NFL each week. And I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm not saying they're all terrible, because we've definitely lived through those years. But how happy are you that Josh Allen is your quarterback when you get to watch most of these games? The caveat I'll say to that is CJ Stroud looks really good. He looks really good. And I know he made some mistakes. He's not, I don't even think he's better than Josh Allen, but I mean, he looks good. He's one of those quarterbacks where you're like, you know what? I wouldn't mind if he was our quarterback, if we were still looking for a franchise quarterback, one of those guys. But anyway, real quick, let's go into stats of the game. First, we're going to start off with Josh Allen. Josh Allen was 9 for 30 for 131 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. James Cook, I mentioned earlier, 20 rushes, 82 yards, 1 touchdown. Josh Allen, the next leading rusher, 4 carries for 54 yards, 0 touchdowns. Keon Coleman, the leading receiver for the Buffalo Bills, 1 reception on 5 targets for 49 yards and 1 touchdown. Dalton Kincaid, 2 receptions on 6 targets for 34 yards. And then Mac Hollins, 2 receptions on 6 targets for 27 yards. Now, this is a perfect opportunity to talk about Mac Hollins. Now, I like Mac Hollins. I don't want to start this discussion out with saying that I don't like the guy. He's cool. He's got cool vibes. He's a tall guy. He's a vet. He's bounced around the league. The problem I have with Mac Hollins isn't so much the player that he is, because I think he is what he is. He's like, I guess I'm trying to think of like a comparison that the Bills have had in recent past. He's not Deontay Hardy, maybe a Trent Sherfield, right? Like it's a let's see what happens, right? Like let's hope he turns into something, right? And he's shown some decent plays. Like there was that touchdown, I think it was week 1 or week 2, I can't remember, but looked pretty good there. The problem I have is that they consistently keep giving Mac Hollins like wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 snaps and targets. That's my problem with Mac Hollins. Like I like the guy, but you shouldn't be treating him like he's, your Stephon Diggs or whatever. This is a guy, like I said, 31 years old, bounced around the league. He's never proven to be a great wide receiver. He's not bad. But when you look at a guy like Curtis Samuel, who you paid $24 million to in the offseason, a guy who was almost 1,000-yard receiver, and had his best season under Joe Brady as a coordinator. A guy that's proven, like, even with, quarterbacks that were inconsistent, like, he still put up decent numbers. And he had 1 reception on 4 targets for 0 yards. Their usage of Curtis Samuel is just baffling. It's baffling to the point where the only way that I can justify the way that they're using Curtis Samuel, or the way that they're not using Curtis Samuel, is that he still has that lingering turf toe injury. That's the only thing I can think of. I could definitely see that being an issue, but he's not showing up in the injury report. So how would you know if it was an issue? So he's not showing up in the injury report. My guess is that for some reason, either Josh doesn't trust him, or Joe. Again, this is Joe Brady's guy for when he was with the Panthers, and I'm sure he was probably, going to bat for him being signed to the Buffalo Bills, so they'd have a player like that. I'm not sure why they're not utilizing Curtis Samuel, and I shouldn't blame Mac Hollins. It's not Mac Hollins' fault that he's not getting utilized, but I mean, the guy's missing. He's missing from the offense. This is a guy who I could see, like, because Khalil Shakir was the only Bills wide receiver that had taken snaps with Josh Allen in the, previous to the season. I thought for sure that this Curtis Samuel could be a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 for the Buffalo Bills. And I mean, right now, what is he, wide receiver 4? Like, it's not good. And it was fine the first 3 weeks because everyone eats. But this last week, everyone was starving. I mean, 9 for 30. Josh was 9 for 30. I mean, that is an abysmal game. I can't remember. I think Josh had a game like this when he was a rookie, maybe against the Packers. But I haven't seen Josh play like that since then. So more rushing yards and passing yards, not a good sign for the Buffalo Bills. On the other hand, C.J. Stroud, 28 for 38, 331 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Cam Akers, leading rusher, 9 carries for 42 yards, 1 touchdown. Ogunbawa it's interesting. He had 15 carries for 30 yards. Oh, I'm sorry, Ogunbowale. 15 carries for 30 yards. He had a halfway decent game. He showed up when it mattered for the Texans. Stephon Diggs, the leading receiver. I mean, how much did he love that? 6 receptions on 8 targets for 82 yards, 0 touchdowns. Nico Collins was the next one, 2 receptions on 2 targets for 78 yards and 1 touchdown. He had that 67-yard touchdown early in the game. So lots of discussion here. As far as, I'm going to talk about Stephon Diggs for a minute. I don't wish any ill will on Stephon Diggs. When he was here, man, he was good. When his mind was in it, when he was fully bought in to the team, he was good. He was top 5 good. And I miss that because we don't have that. And I also kind of miss, in like a weird way, the friendship that Josh Allen and he had. Like, I know Josh gets along. He's easily a guy's guy, right? Like, he gets along with all his teammates. He has cool handshakes with all of them. I get it. But there was just something kind of special, it felt like, between he and Diggs. Like, I mean, they were on the cover of the Sports Illustrated SI Kids, BFFs issue. The kind words that they said about each other back and forth in post-game interviews and stuff like that, man, it's just unfortunate that it happened the way it did. It doesn't change anything, but I don't wish ill will on the guy. I don't see him and hope that he does terrible throughout the season. Now, when the Bills play him, do I hope the Bills beat them? Of course, but I don't root against the guy. It was interesting, that off the field interaction between the two, where Josh said something really short and Stephon said something really short, and it was kind of like a forced goodbye. You can tell there's something there. Whatever it is, I probably never know, but there's definitely something there. So, as Stephon Diggs said, it meant a lot to him in the post-game press conference or locker room interview that he did. He said it meant a lot to him. And not for nothing, it felt like Stephon Diggs was going to cry a little bit. Really emotional win for Stephon Diggs. Felt like he really proved something. Had the game circled on his calendar, even though he said he didn't. he said, how could you not? But he felt like he was going to cry. It felt like he was, a couple steps away from that TO, like, crying, like, that's my quarterback. But we know Stephon's an emotional guy. It's just not the guy that we're used to. I mean, us as Bills fans, like, I remember after the big controversy the last offseason where Josh and Stephon didn't talk the entire offseason. Stephon comes in the first day and leaves the building, upset about something before anything actually got going. And at that moment, you're like, what's going on? The Bills are screwed. Like, what's going on between Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs? Sean McDermott said he was very concerned about everything. And then Stephon Diggs comes in the next day, does a little powwow with the media. He flashes his $1 million smile, pulls up a chair completely. He's almost flirting with the Buffalo media at that point. So like super confident guy. I mean, the guy's like, he's not even, I wouldn't even say cocky because he's just overflowing with confidence. Like, most of us wish we had that sort of confidence in our lives. So to the point where he's like, pull up a chair, let me say, it's everything's good. He was not that way after the Bills game. He was emotional about it, and good for him. Obviously, he played well. He's a good wide receiver, and I think they're obviously going to need him if Nico Collins misses any time. But I mean, we just know it's just unfortunately it's a ticking time bomb. It's just a matter of time until we see him with do that to another team. So miss Stephon Diggs, but obviously understand why he had to go and why they had to trade him. I don't miss the drama. I just miss Josh having that wide receiver that on any given play could be wide open for him. On any given play, the defense has to worry about, because right now, which wide receiver does the defense really have to worry about? Even when Khalil Shakir is healthy, which wide receiver are they thinking about bracketing or putting two guys on or giving over the top safety help for? There's not many guys like that on the Bills right now. So I also got to talk about Josh Allen's concussion, or I mean, at least quote unquote concussion. It was hard to tell, like based on, I just retweeted this quote from Sean McDermott saying it definitely was a concussion. I'm not so sure. Again, I'm not 100% sure if it was a concussion or not. It looked like it from the beginning. His body went limp, but then I could have remembered, and I can't find video of it. It felt like he just jumped right back up again after he came to and jogged the sidelines, which is not something I've ever seen someone with a concussion do. I saw someone over Twitter mention that he got knocked out. Definitely could have been the case. He came to really quickly and he jumped up. I guess I haven't seen many people get knocked out and just get up that quickly. I feel like getting knocked out and getting a concussion are a similar thing. I'm not a doctor, so you people in the medical profession that know better than me, definitely let me know what you think. I've been checking out Banged Up Bills, and he says, the thought was a concussion, but we're not sure. And, he cleared the concussion protocol, or at least not the concussion protocol, but the testing in the medical tent. And the Bills, I guess, at least at this point, are not worried about Josh Allen. I'm kind of worried. It looked like he took it. And Dan Mitchell on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, where he mentioned that he thinks that the Josh Allen suffered a concussion in that one hit on the trick play against Baltimore, which I can't argue there either. It could have been a hit. But what I will take exception to is if you check out Josh Allen concussion, which I did because I was trying to get all the clips of it, and hopefully see, what happened after he got down and got back up again. And the people screaming the most that it's like insane that Josh Allen, would be able to be let back in the game are Dolphins and Chiefs fans, which I think is pretty interesting because you would think it would be Bills fans. And I know a lot of Bills fans are upset that he was put back in. And if it was a true concussion, I mean, I'm right there with you. But if you trust what they say, then I think he's okay. He got the wind knocked out of him. But again, his head did slam off the turf. So what do you do there? But again, like if you search Josh Allen concussion in Twitter, it's like, Dolphins fan here. I can't believe they let him back in, Chiefs fan. And it's funny because the reason they don't care about Josh Allen, like Dolphins fan is not like, man, I really care about Josh Allen, because as Bills fans, I feel like we come together and say, I hope Tua is not truly injured. I hope that wasn't a concussion. Like I genuinely feel bad for him. And I know a lot of Bills Mafia does, because you've seen what happened with the guy, and Dolphins fans are basically just saying, see, they're doing the same thing we did. Like, how come we caught so much crap for it? Right. And they also want to win the division. So if Josh Allen's not playing, then they win the division. Or they don't think they win the division, even if Josh Allen misses the entire season. But that's what they think. That's their rationale for it. I don't see it that way. But again, if it's a true concussion, he's got to go through the protocol. But there's just nothing to definitively say that it was or not. So I'll leave it to the professionals. But from here, it did look like a concussion. I was truly worried about, as I'm sure you all were, just kind of like, oh no, I hope he's okay. Like, forget about the game, forget about the season. You just hope that he's okay and that, he's healthy, because you don't want your guy getting multiple concussions, because we've seen. So those were stats of the game. Now we're going to go into Sweet Sassy Molassy plays of the game. So sweet stats and lasting plays of the game. There's a couple of them. One of my favorites was honorable mention is the Keon Coleman touchdown on 4th and 5 in the third quarter. The Bills were down 20 on 4th and 5. The Bills go for it, which I love the aggressiveness. Sean McDermott doesn't get credit for that, but it was good aggressiveness. At the 49-yard line of the Texans, Josh Allen throws a pass out there to Keon Coleman. He catches it, runs past the defender, gets 49 yards and a touchdown. It was a great play by Keon Coleman, by Josh Allen, and it was one of the best plays of the game. I also wanted to give it to, Cameron Smoot for that sack fumble. I love that play, but I'm going to give it to Terrell Bernard for that interception late in the game when CJ Stroud, who was picking apart the Bills, threw it right to him. And it was just great coverage by Terrell Bernard. People have kind of been criticizing him for his lack thereof, inability to cover the passing game. I think he showed up really well right there. And he showed us exactly why we missed him the last few weeks. I mean, he's one of the best players on this defense, and he showed it. Again, the defense missing, 5 starters today. You include Matt Milano, Taron Johnson, Von Miller. Who else am I missing? Taylor Rapp, and there's someone else I think I'm missing. Oh, Ed Oliver. 5 starters missing. They did a pretty good job to limit the Texans to 23 points. Again, it has to do with the offense. But Terrell Bernard, that interception late in the game that could have potentially led to the Bills going ahead if they had any semblance of an offense. That's my play of the game. All right, let's go into Wall of Fame and Wall of Shame. So let's start with the Wall of Fame. It's got to go on the defense. In particular, I mentioned Terrell Bernard. I mentioned that I really liked what Bobby Babich did in the second half of the game, just making adjustments and truly just kind of limiting that Texans offense that was just absolutely the Buffalo Bills defense. So love that. The Bills were able to stop the run game for the Houston Texans. So even when they were up big, they couldn't just run all over the Bills, which is something we saw last week. They still put up 425 yards. Like, don't get me wrong, but it was not the defense's fault. Wall of Fame. How can you not go with the offense? I mentioned, the offensive line specifically, but, coaching, Joe Brady, Sean McDermott, then going to Josh Allen, and then also the lack of weapons. And that's on Brandon Beane. I saw people mentioning, wasting another year of Josh Allen's prime. And what's funny is people would have said that last year for the Kansas City Chiefs, wasting a year of Patrick Mahomes' prime, because you could argue that the Chiefs have worse weapons last year than the Bills do this year. The big difference with the Kansas City Chiefs team last year, the Bills team this year, is the Bills defense is just battered with injuries. And the Bills defense isn't as elite as the Chiefs defense was last season. The Chiefs defense was the reason why they went as far as they did last season. And obviously Patrick Mahomes being clutch when it mattered. But the Bills don't have that defense. If the Bills had that defense, I think the Bills are 4-1 right now. I think that's probably what happens. If the Bills get, had those 5 starters I just mentioned back, they're probably 4-1. But that's not the way it is. So Wall of Shame, Wall of Fame. Let's go into some hot takes from Bills Mafia. Now, after every Bills game, I write on Twitter, who or what is on your, what are your fire takes for the Bills' loss or win against the opposing team? And you guys never disappoint. Usually never disappoint. But Pete Ski says they should have done 3 straight rushing plays and made Houston use their timeouts. I was yelling at the television. Yeah, I can't argue with that. Agree 100%, Pete Ski. And you know what I said earlier about, that I didn't think the Bills would win even if they made it into overtime. I stand by that, but it doesn't mean that they couldn't have won, right? Like they still could have had a chance. I'll tell you what, they would have had a better chance that way. But then again, we didn't know that they were going to have an incomplete pass, all 3 passes. Maybe that was part of the concussion. We don't know. But, if they had run it 3 straight times right into the line, I feel like more of Bills Mafia would have been criticizing Sean McDermott for not being aggressive enough. So sometimes, man, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So Last Rights Design said, why the bleep are you throwing it from your own 3? Again, Buffalo Ben says, once again, we lost due to terrible coaching. I think he meant we lost a close game due to terrible coaching. The window for the Super Bowl here. It matters when you get hot, right? If you make the playoffs and you get hot at the right time, like getting Matt Milano back in December hot, Khalil Shakir, possibly. Brandon Bean trading for a wide receiver at the trade deadline. That's definitely possible. By the way, if the Bills did trade for a wide receiver at the trade deadline, I mean, who would you consider? I mean, what skills would you look for in that wide receiver? Because the Bills have length. They have guys that are tall. They have Matt Collins. They have Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They have, Keon Coleman, tall guy, 6'3", 6'4". They have speed. They have Curtis Samuel. They have Khalil Shakir. They do have speed. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is fast too. I mean, they have speed on their team. I didn't even mention Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. Tall guys can catch the ball. I'm not sure what they go for. I mean, because they're not going to get Devontae Adams. I mean, it's just not going to happen, right? And even if they do you want to get another, unhappy wide receiver who's been bouncing around from team to team on your roster and be on the hook for the next 4 or 5 years? I don't think Bean wants that. If that was the case, we would have kept Stephon Diggs, right? So I don't think it's closed. This is a bad year, though. I mean, this could have been, a lot of these teams are now exposing the weaknesses that we all saw before the season started. So I'm just wondering if there's another loss before people start wondering if it's Haley Steinfeld's fault as to why Josh Allen's not playing well or something like that. We'll see. Joe Shinelli writes, Josh Allen cannot do it on his own. I thought he could, and it seemed Bean thought the same. We need one or both of those wide receivers who are on the trading block. Rob Crippen says, everyone eats, putting his hands up there. I guess everyone eats. Everyone was starving. Everyone was fasting. It was not a lot of people eating out there. That's funny. Andrew Freeman said, my dad told me that Fairburn might miss the field goal. I said he would make it. They always do. I watched a kicker make a 60-yarder in a rainstorm against them. Oh, yeah, they always make it against the Buffalo Bills. I'm pretty sure that's a given. Ye old Nerdcast says, not challenging that Dalton Kincaid catch I knew was going to hurt. Could have totally shifted this game, but man, we have to play a play for a top wide out. Don't much care which one. We have to make a play. I think he means make a play. Dalton Kincaid, them not challenging, I did think was kind of surprising. Usually Sean McDermott challenges those plays. I'm surprised he didn't, especially with the offense reeling as much as it was. Maybe he was just worried he wouldn't keep the timeout. To be honest, the way I saw it was the ball shifted slightly in his hand. I think that the way that the NFL is, the way that the NFL officiates, that they would have, I think the Bills would have won that challenge, unfortunately. So I agree he should have done it. There was a chance, but I don't think it definitely would have happened. I think there was just a little bit enough of a, he caught the ball. He didn't lose possession of it, but at the same time, he didn't hold it next to him while his feet were in bounds. So I don't think they keep it with him. I could be wrong. God knows I've been wrong before. Ask my wife. So he'll make something of his injured defense and then not challenge Kincaid catch. The second half was amazing comeback, and we have a formula that works offensively. I'm not worried. Defense had many new faces. Backups were hungry. Hyde and Poyer are sorely missed. Absolutely. I mean, I was kind of excited to see Cole Bishop back there because I wanted to see what the rookie could do. I mean, you're talking about a guy who is more gifted athletically than Hyde and Poyer ever were, size-wise, agility-wise, athletically, just got beat deep. And Hyde and Poyer really never let that happen very often, did they? Just, man, that's tough. Buffalo Jill said, I shouldn't have worn my new hat. I didn't change it till halftime. I take this L on my shoulders. And Josh Allen, what the F was that, Joshy? Buffalo Jill, that's not your fault, man. I feel like Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault. Well, I shouldn't have worn my new hat. It's not your fault. Oh, I didn't change it till halftime. It's not your fault. Buffalo Jill, it's not your fault. I wish I was in Buffalo at Saxon. Dave says the defense, with almost as many injuries as they've got starters, gave our healthy-ish offense enough chance to win. They crapped the bed. My hot take is we're actually bad. I'm not ready to say that. I think they had 2 bad games against 2 good teams, but maybe this team isn't bad, but maybe the team isn't as good as it was the last few seasons, right? Like, I don't think it's a bad team, but maybe this is like the Dolphins last season. You go 10-7 and you just can't beat any good teams. That's all. Owen says the fact that we lost like that, I'd rather lose lose an OT. But like at this point, I don't know if my brain can deal with the stress of the next upcoming games. The last two have been brutal to watch. Yeah. Yeah. John Yackel writes, getting a power ranking of number 1 after playing 3 weak teams was very premature. Bill's new ranking is likely going to be between 10 and 15. That's a fast drop. Absolutely. All Perspective TV says, Coach, can someone show some post-game emotion? Well, they don't want to show emotion when they lose, right? They don't want to show how rough it is. It's enough. Get Adams or a legitimate wide receiver. Eat the picks. Not one filler wide receiver has stepped up. We're spinning wheels. And by the way, Anakin, I think, is talking about all like filler wide receivers that we've had. I mean, I mentioned Deontay Hardy, Trent Sherfield. I mean, how many guys have we had like that just never seem to pan out? I mean, I'd say Cole Beasley and maybe Emmanuel Sanders for that one season, maybe John Brown for that one season, but not a lot. Not a lot. Mike, what day is it? Says it's time to fire McDermott. I'm going to say that. I'm not saying it's time to fire McDermott. I mean, if you just admit that this team is devoid of talent just so that they could get Stephon Diggs off the roster and make room for next season and seasons in the future, then you're saying that, he's already working with less of a roster. So is it time to fire him, or is it time to just say that it's a bad year? I don't know. Alex and her says the coaching on this team is hurting this team more than the players are. I can't disagree with that. Bill's Polka writes, Mac Hollins is an attractive man who is bad at football. I can't speak to the first one necessarily, but he's not bad at football. He's just Mac Hollins at football, right? He's not bad at it. He's just what he's always been. Just not great at it, right? Like he's not really good at it. I don't necessarily think he's bad. AJ Tharp said, I can't believe we lost to a team play in the XFL. I love that take. I hate those Houston H-Town uniforms. I usually love these alternate uniforms. Did not like that one. I thought it was terrible. I thought it looked awful. I hope the Bills finally give us an alternate uniform when we wanted the red Buffalo helmet. They might end up giving us something stupid like that we never wanted. Buffalo Jill says, not capitalizing on that fumble recovery with a touchdown was the end for us. Absolutely. Absolutely. That was a time. If you were going to show that you're a good team, you take advantage of that as good as you can. So, all right. Ichabod Crane says, my take, which is perfect for this time of year, Ichabod Crane. My take, we've already lost 2 straight games to 2 AFC opponents who we are all but sure to see in the playoffs. We need a new coach, dog. I'm cheering till the day I die, but I'm not going to gaslight myself into thinking McDermott is a coach we'll win, not just go to a Super Bowl with. I've never been on the fire McDermott bandwagon, and I'm not ready to get on yet. Wait until, and by the way, it's not just because I like the guy, not just because I think that he brings something to this team hasn't had in years. It's not because he has the best winning percentage of any Bills head coach. I think besides Marv Levy, or maybe better than Marv Levy at this point. It's not all those things. It's because when I hear former players talking about Sean McDermott, and when people say, what do you think about him? It's if they didn't like Sean McDermott, they didn't like the job he was doing, they would say, he's doing the best he can, or they would make up some excuse. They wouldn't say affirmatively, like with such conviction like they are right now. If you listen to Eric Wood talk about, Sean McDermott or any of these former players, they love Sean McDermott and they think that he can get them past over the hurdle. If they were kind of wavering in their thoughts on Sean McDermott, then maybe I would too. But I'll take it from the guys who play the game and what they think of. I remember I heard Eric Wood, Jerry Ostrowski, and John Fina talk about Sean McDermott specifically when everyone was saying fire him, and neither of them wavered. They're like, no, Sean can do it. So they just felt. So these are former players. I trust what they think more than what I think, and I still like the guy. So again, he is not without flaws. He does have some huge flaws. But I mean, watch a regular NFL game, man. Even teams that are good, watch Andy Reid play. He'll make some dumb timeout decisions. He's just bailed out by Patrick Mahomes more often than not. Terrible coaching at the end. Should have challenged play earlier. Our receivers stink. Trade for Amari Cooper. I would absolutely take Amari Cooper in a heartbeat. If we can afford him, I love Amari Cooper. He would easily be an upgrade to our roster and possibly long-term as a great wide receiver, veteran wide receiver. Miss Molly says Joe Brady had an awful game plan and Josh Allen was trash. I was there. I saw it. Yep. I saw her on Instagram. She was posting pictures of her and her husband at the game, being able to actually watch it. And yeah, I felt bad. Molly, if you're listening to this, which I know you listen, you've been one of our longest listeners and supporters. I feel bad that you guys saw that game. I was hoping that you'd see a better game. Sorry, it was as bad as it was. Okay, we got to leave this on a funny. I'm going to leave it with my guy Charles Byrne. He says the Bills defense made this game look closer than it was. Josh Allen and his receivers aren't on the same page and are not in sync with each other. That's for sure. I mean, just talking about being in sync. I mean, what about that play where Keon Coleman got hit in the back of the head? I mean, it was a simple slant route. He couldn't end up doing it. I could end up making the play, couldn't end up catching the ball. Just a rough game for the Buffalo Bills in general. Those are my takes, guys. It's funny. Whenever it's by myself, I'm like, I'll probably talk for 15, 20 minutes tops. This is 45 minutes or so. Thank you guys all so much for listening. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. Next week, we'll have Mike and John, my co-hosts, back to talk more Buffalo Bills. It's going to be exciting. Hopefully, we're talking about a Bills win over the Jets. And yeah, so again, this was a tough game. It was a winnable game. And a few things go the Bills' way. They might have won. I wouldn't have felt more confident about the Bills if somehow they got a pick six and won the game. It just didn't feel like they're weak. I don't know what's going on with Josh Allen. Hopefully he's not injured, but he needs to work with Joe Brady day and night this next week to find out a game plan to get over the Jets and to get over whatever rut they're in, because they're definitely in a rut. So thank you guys all for listening. So for me, Nate, go Bills. Appreciate you all listening, downloading, subscribing.